And it's just a huge honor today to be podcast interviewing Michael Grant, who Joel Berg, that we had on, what, a week ago? A couple weeks ago? I mean, you refer to this guy as, I mean, he's centered out of Bangkok, Thailand, and if anybody wants to do dental business in Southeast Asia,
that's right.
They need to talk to Michael Grant. He was born in the UK. He underwent a typical British boarding school education and studied business in Munich, Germany on a scholarship from Siemens. And Siemens,
big corporation.
Yeah, and when they were diversifying their portfolio, they spun off the dental division.
That's right, indeed.
And called that Sirona. And the building didn't move or anything. It's just a lot of these big, like Procter & Gamble and Gillette, they're redistributing their portfolio. So really...
you worked for Siemens.
I worked for Siemens, yeah.
So really, Sirona is really Siemens, and it was spun off, and now it's owned by Dentsply X-Ray on the Nasdaq. After working for Siemens Dental for a number of years, he spent 2 years working for a U.S. company in South Korea and 3 years in Australia for Espe. Prior to it, sold to 3M. Man, it's a global world. Following that, Michael was in charge of Espe Premier, Espe's U.S. subsidiary in Norristown, Pennsylvania for 10 years. For the past 18 years, Michael Grant has been an independent dental industry consultant working with DMG out of Hamburg, Germany.
Right.
And Henry Schein, and you're friends with Stan Bergman.
Right.
And Hu-Friedy, which is Pennsylvania?
No, Chicago.
Oh, Hu-Friedy, Chicago. Okay, sorry about that. Brain fart. He is now based in Bangkok, Thailand, where he also has an organic farm 2.5 hours northeast of Bangkok, which specializes in 100% organic production of most fruits and vegetables, including mushrooms, as well as producing numerous Thai FDA-certified health foods, beverages, and snacks. He's also about to open a restaurant and farm shop and cottages for organic farm stays are planned for 2019. Ryan, who's the female dentist that we had on the show who always does a missionary trip to Bangkok, Thailand every year? She takes care of her husband.
She's on Smiles on Wings.
Smiles on Wings.
Yeah, let's see. Hold on.
Are you familiar with her?
No, but there are a few people that
Can you send me her YouTube?
There are a few people that come over and do work like that I help sometimes get, some of them had originally brought the supplies with them and the equipment, which is very difficult. But the dental supplies system in Asia is very sophisticated, just like here, and they can get anything there.
So how long have you been in dentistry?
240 years.
240 years?
Yeah.
Were you, that is a long time.
The reason I got into dentistry was that I did a general Siemens training, and the smallest group that Siemens had was dentistry.
Right.
And so that's why I chose, I thought, with power stations and airport lighting and household equipment, they're huge factories or big companies with thousands of employees, and the smallest one, which was at that time was 3,000 people, was Siemens Dental. So that's why I went into dental.
And then they spun that off.
They spun that off, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I went to work with Espe.
So when they spun it off to
Sirona.
When they spun it off to Sirona, did you stay with?
No, that was long
time. What city was Sirona in? Was it Salzburg, Austria? Or
actually Sirona moved their headquarters. I mean, Siemens Dental was in a place called Bensheim near Heidelberg in Germany, and Sirona, for I think tax purposes, moved their headquarters to Austria. But they kept the manufacturing plant and everything else.
Right. It's like who just did that out of Japan? Who's the biggest Japanese company? GC.
Yeah.
They moved to Switzerland.
They moved that to Switzerland, but wasn't that just a tax move? I mean, did they move any management or employees?
Mr. Nakal, the owner, moved to Switzerland.
Yeah, and now it's funny because Connecticut's having a problem where they did a big raise the tax on the wealthiest. So guess what's happening?
Right.
Thousands of millionaires are moving their home.
Seattle just did that too.
Who did?
Seattle is raising taxes like crazy.
Yeah.
Phoenix is trying to get them down here, all those companies.
Yeah. People don't realize that if you don't pay your taxes, at the end of the day, it's forced. I mean, if you don't pay your taxes, they're going to come and arrest you and put you in jail. It's not a voluntary thing. You have to do that. And it's so easy for so many people. Well, like when people say free health care. I would say, well, what does that mean? Are you going to arrest me and take me to a dental office and chain me to a chair? Why do I have to work free? And they go, oh, no, we'll pay you. With what? Oh, other people's money. Well, did you ask those people? I mean, it's crazy how people just feel entitled to the rights of other people's work and productivity. But let's start back at macroeconomics. Do you think it was smart for Siemens to spin off Sirona, and do you think it was smart for Sirona to marry Dentsply?
Oh, you know, I think Siemens was a very good, very high quality product company, and it was sad actually they spun it off. But it's so tiny. It was such a tiny part of their multi-billion-dollar business that it was just, many people that I used to speak to from other Siemens groups didn't even know they had dental.
If I can pitch in, if you don't mind, there was a story that I heard about Siemens Dental, which I don't know if it's true, but I heard it many places.
Right.
That about 25 years ago, when Siemens still had the dental division, the CEO of Siemens was flying in a plane to the U.S. in first class, and the two beds next to each other, and he turned to his seatmate and said, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, what do you do?" And he said, "I'm an artist." And the other guy said, "Oh, okay, what are you?" And he said, I'm the CEO of Siemens. And the artist said, "Oh, I use some of your dental products for my artwork. I use some of the materials for my artwork." And he said, "We have dental products?" And then a month later, it was spun off. I've heard that story many, but it's a believable story.
Yeah, you can't make this up. When I was a little kid in Wichita, Kansas, there was a company in Mays, Kansas, and they made side bailers. But through all the mergers and acquisitions, it was eventually owned by the parent company Fiat, and the CEO said, "What is that? What do we have in Mays, Kansas?"
Amazing.
And nobody knew in Fiat headquarters, so they just shut it down.
Right.
Like, if nobody even knows what this thing is.
Which is probably like 100 million in sales or something,
Yeah, it was crazy. So do you think it will be? Do you think it was good that you married Dentsply? And
I think it's a pity, because I think...
You think it's what?
A pity. I think it's not good that these good, healthy, reasonably sized companies are then just spun off, because it was very unique, it was very good, very high quality, and people liked it. It's the same with Espe. Espe was bought by 3M.
And where was Espe at in Germany?
Espe was in a place called Seefeld, which is south of Munich. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. Joel also worked with me at Espe.
Yeah.
And that's how we met about 30 years ago. And that it was great pity, because they get swallowed up by a corporation, and then the saddest thing is that the customer service level always drops, I think, because a smaller company is much more closer connected to the customers and the customers' desires and wishes, and I think it's nicer if they can stay, but it's...
Ryan, send me that stat on the S&P 500s from 2000 to 2018, their survival rate. And what you guys do, promise you will all meet her, is she, podcast 831, Smiles on Wings with Dr. Usa Banong. I think she's like out of Pennsylvania or somewhere. But she runs a charity out of Bangkok, Thailand, and I told her...
She must be tired. She obviously...
Yeah. And I told her that I would go there with her, but I don't like to fly 15 hours without killing several... Like when Cambodia asked me to speak at their dental association, I said, well, you got to get a neighboring country. So they called Malaysia. So
he can hook up any lectures you want.
Yeah.
I can hook you up
through Schein or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, when we lectured in Cambodia, Ryan and I, we went to the airport, flew to LA, flew to Tokyo, flew to Kuala Lumpur, flew to Cambodia, and by the time, from the minute we left our house till we got to our hotel room, is 36 hours.
Yeah.
So it's like, you don't go 36 hours, lecture, turn around and come back.
But I can hook you up with, there's a great group called T32.
T32?
Yeah.
Can you find that, Ryan?
What is it? 32 teeth.
Yeah, T32 in Singapore. They have offices, about 12 in Singapore. They have 10 in Philippines. They have big one in Shanghai. And they have one in Hong Kong, and they're looking also to buy some in Thailand.
It's a DSO?
But it's high-end practices.
Very high-end.
T32.
Yeah.
That would be
the principal guy's a prosthodontist, graduated at UW.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Keng Moon
Wong, Dr. Keng Moon Wong.
Can you find that?
Keng Lu Wong.
Keng Moon. KENGMUNWONG. Family name Wong, WONG. T32 in Singapore.
Good guy. Yeah.
That's anyway, so they are very innovative. Their main aim is to educate people about products. And even though they educate their own people, obviously, but they also educate any other dentist. They're very happy to educate people. And there are very close connections in Asia to America, especially. So a lot of people do post-grad courses here and things like that. So one of the advantages that Asia also has is that it jumped in at the top level. I mean, we've taken 200 years to get where we are now, and they come in and they have all the innovations and everything else that we have in America. And America is still the leading, in my opinion, a country with new products, new techniques of operations and dentistry in general. Pediatrics, which Joel is in, they're far ahead of most countries with pediatric dentistry. And
I still don't know why that's especially, because all pediatric dentistry is just a small human.
Right, but it's actually
Nobody wants to treat.
It's just, what is your specialty? Small people.
Right.
Small people. I'm a small odontist.
Small animal veterinary dentistry.
small odontist.
So let's do Dentistry Uncensored. I like talking about the most controversial things.
Yeah.
Well, one of the most controversial things within these multinational companies is there's 3 types of price discrimination. First degree price discrimination is I sell Bill Gates a Coca-Cola for $1,000 and I sell you one for $1. And Supreme Court says that's illegal.
Right.
Number 2 is volume, and Supreme Court says it's legal. If I buy one Barbie doll, I pay $10, but if Walmart buys 100,000, they can pay $5. Supreme Court says it's cool, just show your math,
right.
So that we know there really is a volume. But number 3 is geographical, and it is illegal in the United States by the Supreme Court, but it's done all over the world, especially dental supplies. For instance, if you go to Scottsdale, the richest area,
yeah.
and you go to West Phoenix, the poorest area, and you go buy a basket of goods. You go buy a gallon of gas, a gallon of milk, Big Mac, pack of cigarettes. All the prices are the same.
Right.
But then the insurance companies will collect money from, they'll insure a population of people, say at Intel. And those employees come from all over the city, and Intel pays a fixed amount. But then when you go to the dentist in Scottsdale,
right.
they'll pay you, they'll value a crown at $1,000.
Right.
And you go to South Phoenix and it'll be $500.
Right.
It's
How
the
much
same
difference?
thing, 50%.
Wow.
There's a lady that posted on Dental Town today, and she says there's this article in the Washington Post about poor rural dentistry, and what's wrong with the rural area. And this lady said, well, I had a small town in rural, and I moved just a half hour to Memphis, and my insurance usual and customary fee is now twice of what it was.
Right.
If they'd have paid me twice of what it was in the rural, I would have stayed there.
Yeah.
But so the insurance companies, they do. I think Delta is the largest abuser of geographic price discrimination. But the pharmaceutical companies, we know they sell Viagra for $10 a pill. I didn't know that. Joel just told me that's what he's paying. But they sell the same pill for 25 cents in Shanghai because it only costs them a nickel to buy it.
Right.
And then so Walmart started to say, well, gosh, if you're going to sell all this stuff for dirt cheap in Asia, we're going to go put up a buying store in Hong Kong.
Right.
And they were buying up all the pharmaceuticals, shipping them back. But then when George Bush was elected, I think the pharmaceutical industry raised about $6 million. So the first thing he did is passed a law to ban the re-importation of drugs. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so all these mom, pop, senior citizens voted you in office, and the first thing you did is throw them under a bridge for a $6 million donation. Could you just said, hey, if 6 million seniors each give me $1, I'll let you buy Viagra for 25 cents a pill instead of $10. But sorry, this is the end of the question. I know I ran too much. But they call it in dentistry gray market.
All right.
Yes.
And they say that obviously they sell bonding agents for $250 a bottle in America that they sell for $50 in New Delhi.
Right.
And then when a dentist who's from Indian descent in Phoenix calls his dentist father in India and says buy it all up and
right.
ship it back UPS, it's all good, but we're supposed to say that that's bad, it's dirty, it's gray market.
There are specific
so talk about
problems
that.
with gray market, and the biggest problem is that you don't know when it's re-imported whether it's the real thing or not. It could easily be a copy, and it could be very dangerous. There are some things in China have happened with the when they put melatonin in children's milk and things like that. So when you cannot guarantee that it's going to be the original product if you get.
Can I just stop you there? In a large B2C market like melatonin,
right.
Viagra, vitamin C, I totally get that.
Yeah.
But in a small B2B market, I mean, would anybody really go into the B2B business of making dental bonding agents?
Well, they would.
Is there any proof of
plenty
that?
of people that do it in a small way. It makes enough money for them, and they'll do it. You know?
I'll give you another example. I had several friends that knew that Patterson had an exclusive distributorship with the CAD-CAM CEREC machine.
Right, CEREC, yeah.
So they just flew to Germany, bought it from there,
right.
and then shipped it back here. And so they got it for like 60 grand back in the day. And all their friends were paying 100 grand because Patterson marked it up 40%. And that is illegal. But then the Patterson rep's like, well, I don't want to lose my $5,000 a month supply account over enforcing this, you know, this
illegal activity.
Right. But so do you think the gray market is a bad, and do you think it's
I think it's problematic. But you know,
it's problematic.
I work with DMG and Henry Schein and Hu-Friedy. But Henry Schein, for example, bring a big assortment of products in a one-stop shop area or a system in Asia that a small dealer couldn't do it, you know. So they offer, and also because registration of products is getting more complicated and more expensive in Asia, many of the original small dealers that were importers, they can't afford it anymore. So you get
because why?
Because they can't afford it anymore. They can't afford the registration because just take Singapore, for example. There are about 2,000 dentists. And if you have
it's like Seattle.
You have an exciting product coming out, and the local importer says, you know, I can't sell. I've only got maybe I've got 1,000 of those 2,000 customers, and it's not worth it for me to register it. But somebody like Schein can afford to do it. And if they can't register, if the local dealer doesn't register it, it means the dentist can't use this amazing product that's new and innovative and exciting. So there are pros and cons with all those sort of things like that. You know?
Now I noticed one thing that would concern me. I'm in Phoenix, so one of the problems with buying supplies in Phoenix is that when you throw them in the back of a UPS truck, it's 140 degrees.
Yeah.
So back in the day, like when I opened up in '87, I mean, we used to complain all the time. I mean, you would get polyvinyl siloxane and pressure material that wouldn't even set.
Right.
It would just be this permanent goo. Yeah. And they'd say, and then you call and they go, is there any chance you're in Phoenix? It's like, yeah, I'm exactly in Phoenix. So I know heat. Yeah. And so if somebody bought something legit, but then it wasn't stored or refrigerated or the right
major manufacturers that I deal with, they have guidelines, strict guidelines of how you can store it, how you can deliver it. For example, local anesthetic has to be delivered in cooled, which is more expensive obviously, but in cooled the containers and things like that, and also the impression materials, so they can't get too hot there. And they have storage recommendations for the dealers and delivery, because in Asia it can be on the back of a motorbike, and somewhere in some of these small cities, Hong Kong or Singapore, they deliver with a motorbike, you know, and it's boiling hot like it is and so they have to have special containers then to deliver them. It's getting more complicated. It makes it more expensive also for that
anesthesia thing, though. I always think that anesthesia thing, it's not all quite what everybody thinks it is, because Stan Bergman, who's a friend of both of ours, several times I've been out in the middle of Timbuktu jungle, whatever, on some missionary dental trip, and all of a sudden you come up to something that looks like my house with 10 operatories. And it's like, who the hell built that? It's always Stan Bergman. It's always Henry Schein. But the funniest one was we were at an orphanage in Tanzania, and I told these kids, I said, the guy that built all this is my friend, and I'm gonna take on my phone and I want you to thank my friend. His name's Stan. So I'm telling them all, and they're all listening, you know, but you don't know what they're hearing. And I say, okay, so when I say 3, everybody say, thank you, Stan. And I go 1, 2, 3, and they go, happy birthday to Stan. That was just so adorable, all these little kids.
Yeah. And Schein is a very benevolent company. They do a lot of good work all over the world.
So what do you think's gonna happen to Stan and Schein with your buddy from your neighbor in Seattle, Amazon? I noticed that the last 2 Greater New York dental meetings, Amazon had a booth.
Right.
But they've been I've been seeing them stocking meetings for 4 or 5 years. What's the corporate DMF? I spoke there one time in San Diego, the dental manufacturers.
Oh, the DMA.
Oh, yeah,
Dental manufacturer.
yeah.
I spoke there at one of their annual meetings in San Diego, and there were 2 men in black. And everybody knew they were having the Amazon. But do you? What is your prediction?
Well, I think that people like Schein have a customer service level that you need. You know, when you're treating a patient and you've got something that's not working, that you can call up and then find out exactly what's going on, and if you're making any mistakes and what you can do to avoid a mistake. That you can't do that with Amazon. So I think that this the direct contact with the customer that Schein and other companies like that have are beneficial, and I don't think Amazon will be able to provide that.
I think the most interesting feedback is we had on the president of the 3M of the dental division, and which does over $1 billion a year in sales. And he was sitting right in your chair, and I asked him what he thought, and he says, "You know what's funny?" He says, "So many people ask me about that, but you know who's never asked me about that is the dentist."
Right.
He goes, I've never had a dentist say, "Will you sell your stuff through Amazon or Amazon Prime?" And I think what it is the dentist, they always think their number one cost is labor, but their number one cost is the PPO reduction fee. You know, they charge $1,000 for a crown, the insurance pays $600. Right. So 42% is PPO fee. The dentist is 35%. The staff is 25%. The lab bill's 10%. Supply is 6%. So on the feeding chain, they're mostly concerned about PPOs. They're mostly concerned about labor.
Yeah.
They're got their eyes on their lab bill.
But they worry
by the time you get to supplies and the electric bill.
They spend a lot of time worrying about that, though.
Yeah, they do.
It doesn't seem like the amount of interest on the part of dentists isn't related to that percentage.
You see, the other thing...
You think the interest is not related to that?
I mean, I think they don't spend enough time talking about it, as you just said, which is correct. You know,
they don't realize it often.
Yeah, they don't.
So low.
And the weirdest thing is, so the PPO reduction is their number one cost at 42%. The dentist pay for doc is 35%. Staff 25%. Lab 10%. Supply is 10%. But here's where it gets just creepy. Marketing is 3%. And they won't do it. They don't blink. I'll send you a deal. Hey, will you do all your dentistry 42% off? Sure. Where do I sign? Okay. Hey, you want, instead of 3%, you want to spend 5% marketing to the half of America, the over 150 million people that don't even have dental insurance, and will come pay for your $1,000? No, I don't like selling dentistry. I don't like marketing.
I know I'm not supposed to ask questions to you, but I'm here if I can ask you that.
Absolutely. We're just pretend we're out at a bar having a beer and a cheeseburger.
Because the first thing you said, the PPO reduction, which is interesting, and I think dentists don't like it, of course, and they talk about it a lot, but it's a reality. So what is your? So I'm hearing your advice to dentists would be to fight that, not to fight that because you can't change that. Is to do more marketing. Is to recognize that is true and to spend more in marketing in response specifically to the biggest expense, and to say, look, I can't get by with the $600 a crown. It's not going to work for me. So just complaining about it doesn't change it.
There's two trains on the PPO discussion. And I'll talk about the first one. All three of us have to agree that when we got into dentistry, the biggest brands in dentistry, Colgate, Crest, and Listerine, they were already there. The biggest brand built in our lifetime was Invisalign. Mm-hmm. And Invisalign's $6,500. And there are 1,000 dentists who spend 5% of collection doing all this Invisalign advertising, and they get 5 to 10, some of them 15, and in places like Cambodia and Indonesia. I'm not talking about New York City and that are coming in and dropping $6,500 for Invisalign. So I mean, a half of America does not have any form of dental insurance, and most dental insurance doesn't cover orthodontics. Right. And I mean, when you get a high-ticket item like Invisalign, I mean, it's just crazy. I know one dental office that spends 15% on just digital marketing. He's an orthodontist. He's doing $5 million a year in Invisalign. Wow. And also, when we were little, the big old families, no birth control, just the really worst child got braces. Right. Now they come in at 40 and they're just post-divorce and they're getting fixed up again. They're like, this one's rotated and this one's chipped. So people are buying $6,500 worth, though, when no one in their friends and families even knows they have a crooked teeth. So I think
marketing is the answer.
Yeah, so I think Invisalign is just gonna. I mean, I think that stock will do well because orthodontics is no longer treating malocclusions and cross bites and that. It's 40-year-old women saying, I mean, it's just. I mean, it's like. It's almost gone into the mani-pedi hair fashion purse market. But the thing about the PPO, which is abusive, and I wish Dennis would lay the line, is that I've always said that the reason the people have never trusted help from governments around the world is because they're never really trying to help. They're always trying to control. Like, they don't sit there and say, hey, here's $500 a month and to help you with your apartment or condo or trailer or whatever. They say, no, you have to live in government housing. The same thing with insurance. It's like Delta's not helping anybody because they're saying, oh, no, here's the fee. You can only sell a Ford Taurus, and there will not be a Buick, a Cadillac, a Ferrari. It's like, well, why is Delta killing off the Ferrari, Mercedes, Benz? Why don't they just really try to be a benefit and say, hey, you need a crown? Well, we only value, you know, our fee schedule of a crown can only be, say, $700, and we only pay half that's $350. If you want to go to a dentist that charges $1,000, knock yourself out. Here's a list of all the dentists in Seattle. Here's the ones that take our fee schedule, and here's the ones that you'll have to pay a higher fee. Because people value stuff differently, and so what happens?
That's indemnity insurance, then, basically. That's what you're saying. Indemnity insurance.
Or when they set their fee schedules, that they set their fee schedule, and it's great when they want to benefit and help, but when they sit there and say, oh no, we want to control, we want to go into a price market segment of a Chevy, a Taurus, an Olds, a Buick, a Cadillac, a Rolls Royce, and say there will be nothing above a Ford Taurus. There will be no Buicks, Cadillac, Chevys. And then when some girl really values this and says, well, I live in a poor part of town and I want to go to this fancy cosmetic dentist in Scottsdale, but she's not a member. Well, why is she not a member? Because Delta says, well, you have to accept our fee. Well, why can't that little girl who's getting a benefit from her employer, I mean, this isn't some federal government deal, the employer bought this, why can't she apply her subsidy, her benefit? Same thing in public housing. There's all this crime in all these areas. If you just sit there and said, well, we're not going to provide your government housing, we're going to give you a benefit, we're going to get $500 a month. How many would go rural? How many would go buy their own trailer park or their own condo? But see, the government, it's never about helping.
Right.
It's always about controlling.
Yeah.
And then it always does not end well.
Totally.
It never ends in the end well.
You should ask Michael, because I think dental insurance doesn't exist in Southeast Asia, right? And all this T32, which is doing well.
So name the countries that you are fluent in, and I mean, they understand well in South. Is it basically all Southeast Asia?
Yeah.
And which one of those have dental insurance?
Singapore has some sort of dental insurance, I think.
Not much.
But most of them don't.
Japan does.
Oh, they have. No, I have to correct myself.
Now,
Thailand has dental insurance, but unfortunately, the level of the care is done.
Most people work outside the system. It's like UK.
Yeah. But the level of care is. I mean, they can get it for very little money.
So, do you consider Japan Southeast Asia or not really?
It's different altogether.
Yeah, it's different.
You know, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea.
And I'll give you another example in Japan. And not just Japan, one of the greatest civilizations ever lived, but in France, Paris, and London. Those are London, Paris, and Tokyo has got to be the top 10 list of the 3 greatest civilizations that ever lived. And when I podcasted live from there, when I was lecturing there, podcasting live, no one would go on the podcast and say it, but they all tell me the reason implants are booming is because in all 3 of those great civilizations, the government insurance will only pay $100 for a molar endo. But it's not a $100 benefit towards your molar endo. You can only charge $100. So when you need a molar root canal, and Tokyo's got a higher cost structure than Phoenix, and we're over here getting $1,000. So what do?
Go private.
They extract the tooth because an implant is not on the deal. So they say, yeah, that tooth's got to come out. So they're pulling a human tooth that could have been treated with a root canal and crown and placing the implant because they could charge $1,500 for the implant, $1,000 because it's out of the government. Yeah. So if those 3 great civilizations would say we only give a $100 benefit to a root canal, then the dentist in Tokyo would say, Well, a root canal costs $1,000. Insurance will pay $100. Do you want to pay $900 just like you bought a Honda Accord and a Lexus and a Toyota and a Sony, or do you want me? You know, what do you want to do?
It would implant for more money.
And that's where dentists need to. That's where dentists and physicians need to wise up, because I think there's a general consensus that people need help in healthcare. But once the help crosses into control, then the pros and cons.
But how do the dentists change that though? Because they don't have the decision power to change that fee structure, fee schedules thing.
Well, I mean, I think it should be. I mean, I know I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an insurance person. I'm just a short, fat, bald, dumb dentist from Kansas, born in a barn. But that's.
I didn't know the born part.
Well, I know I was born in a barn because my mom told me a million times. Every time I left the door open, she said, "Howie, were you born in a barn?" And I thought, I must have been, because I always leave the door open.
That's funny.
But you know, that group I was telling you about in Singapore, T32, they are endeavoring to make implants more accessible to the people who don't have so much money. They're working hard on it. They're trying to fight. They do the top of the line stuff, but they're definitely making an attempt to make it feasible for a person with less money to get one if they need one.
So explain to my homies who are in the United States, Canada, Australia, what country by country, and tell them what's dentistry like in Thailand and.
It's like anywhere else. I mean, you know, even in America, you have very high level dentistry and you have poor dentistry, and in Thailand it's exactly the same. But you can get, for example, I'm quite close to a number of universities in Bangkok. You can get very good dentistry for little money, but you can also go to one of the top of the line dentists who treat a lot of tourist dentists. They have a lot of, in Thailand in general, there's a lot of tourist medical care and dental care. And
see, why can't insurance also do that? I mean, what a concept. I mean, why is it $100,000 for a bypass here?
Yeah,
and
right.
you could get the same bypass done in New Delhi. Yeah. And the Indian school, the Indian doctors, I think, have to be better, because if you look at how many people applied to get into med school or dental school in America versus India, you have to be a freak unicorn to get in.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have a resume that basically says, I'm Batman. If Batman and Wonder Woman had a child, this is the freak that would come out. Because they're straight A. I mean,
half the medical community in England are from India.
Yeah.
And they're very good. They're highly trained, very good, very successful, and very able.
So is dental tourism a thing in Thailand?
Yes, definitely.
And where are they mostly coming from?
All over. From the Middle East, from Europe. Because a lot of people, Thailand itself gets about 20 million tourists a year.
And what are the main reasons of tourism? What's the number one attraction?
It's the islands.
This is Dentistry Uncensored, so just go ahead and knock yourself out.
They have in the high season weather like Phoenix, not quite as hot but dry, but during the three or 4 months of the year, they have, it's inexpensive in comparison with many other countries. They have beautiful islands with clear water and fish and unspoiled things like that as well. But they also have to be careful, because, you know, the more and more tourists come, the more likely it is to ruin the.
But what about safety?
It's very safe.
Most Americans, their number one concern is it going to be safe?
But the funny thing is that most American cities are much more dangerous than any other city in Asia. Much more dangerous. I would be much more concerned about going through certain areas in Philadelphia where I used to live than I would walking around Bangkok at night.
Yeah, but that's the problem, because in America you know where not to go.
But tourists don't know.
Right.
But it's very safe.
I quit going to Cabo. Me and a dentist in New Mexico, Craig Steigen, we used to always go down there and go deep sea fishing. But the last time I was down there, the policeman robbed me.
Yeah.
I was walking back to the resort, and it was only like a mile, and I heard these sirens, so I kind of go to the side of the road. They pull up right behind me, so I kind of get more in the grass. Obviously, it's not me. No, it was me. And they threw me up against the truck, frisked me, took all the cash, credit cards on my wall, threw the rest on the ground, jumped in a police car, and rode off. And then I walked in there, and I complained to the hotel manager, and he actually started crying. He goes, they're ruining our business.
I'm sure.
He goes, I've been here forever, and he goes, most of all my good clients aren't coming back. But they say 10,000 people get killed. Oh, and then we did a charity dental thing where we flew to alcohol. Here's how he likes to do charity. They, because I'm too old for the living in the jungle and all that stuff. So, but there was this one where we could stay in a 5-star resort in Acapulco, and then every morning it was an hour drive up the dirt road, and we do charity dentistry all day. But then at the end of the day, you're back in a 5-star resort, and and all that stuff like that. But we were there for a week, and Zach was there. Zach and. It was like the 4th or 5th day there. There was like 3 people gunned down. In front of the hotel.
Yeah, I know. At the Indonesia might be a little bit right in the southern part of Thailand on the border.
No, but the southern part is Malaysia.
Well, Malaysia, the border of Malaysia.
But, there are some problems in that area there between Malaysia but otherwise it's very safe, and inexpensive. And they are very friendly,
service oriented,
and we're
service oriented.
Like in the 20 richest countries, the dentists are always in the top 1% in years of education, and they're usually in the top 5% in income.
Right, same.
Is that about the same?
That's about the same in Asia.
About the same?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, in the countryside, they're perhaps not as wealthy, but that's about the same. Yeah.
So what? Tell us what do you do? What is your job? What is your business?
I work mainly, as I said before, with a company called DMG in Germany, which is a manufacturer of lots of privately owned company, manufactures many types of
out of Germany.
Out of Hamburg, Germany. I work with Henry Schein, and Henry Schein are establishing themselves in Asia. They already have a place in Hong Kong. They have something in China, and they have they bought the biggest deal about 5 years ago in Thailand, and they're also looking at other places.
Australia, they own a dealership, right?
Australia and New Zealand, they also have. And I also work with Hu-Friedy, and Hu-Friedy is well known for high quality instruments all over the world. And I help promote their products. I have a lot of connections with. It's not for me personally. It's not what I know. I have many. It's who I know more, because I have a lot of connections. Having been in the dental industry for very long, I know a lot of deans of the universities. I've been friendly with Joel, who's famous, as well, for about 30 years. And we worked together at Espe when I was at Espe. So that is mainly what I do. I just, and I try where I can to help students, if I can do that. I mean, I work quite closely with a university called Sharjah University in the Middle East. And that group of their students association to bring to DMG, to Schein, to whoever, to let them see other parts of the world and let them introduce them to the dental manufacturing world, which they would never normally see. And also let them, I'm trying to get somebody to do a postgrad course, or trying to help somebody to do a postgrad course in Thailand, and which will be based on English. And English studies.
You're trying to get someone to do it?
I'm trying to help them to get there, because one problem at the moment, sad problem, is that with the States, they have the cost of postgrad courses here is very expensive, and now a lot of them are concerned about, because they don't want too many foreigners here, and so there are other areas opening up in Asia, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, to cater for this group of young dentists that don't have so much money, but still want a good
education.
An advanced education, postgrad education.
So you're looking at putting lower cost postgrad education centers in Southeast Asia?
I'm trying, but
would you do much of it online?
Well, no. At the moment I have just contacts with various universities. I have Thammasat University just outside Bangkok, for example.
T32 is going to do that, right?
Yeah,
they're trying to do what you just said about the graduate school.
Yeah, T32, this group in DSO group in Singapore, they center on education for young dentists, for existing dentists, and that's what I like. And I think I'd like you to do a podcast there sometime. Because
where?
In Singapore.
Last time I lectured in Singapore, we did 4 or 5 podcasts.
Yeah, but this particular group,
absolutely,
who are really dedicated.
And what's
to
the name of the group?
T32.
Oh, let's see if Ryan found it. Let's see if Ryan.
T32. But there are other groups like that too, but they are specifically dedicated to educating competitors and their own people and young dentists and students.
Ryan found it.
Good,
Ryan, good job. Detective Ryan.
Which one was that?
T32.
Oh, yeah, we got it.
He wants us to lecture there.
Yeah.
Oh, right now.
But another thing we should talk about, Stan and those guys, is, Dentaltown has 450 online CE courses. They're all ADA approved, AGD approved. The vetting process is enormous. I mean, I argue with 5-6 dentists every day on the email, not that we won't approve his course. We just tell them you can't. You're saying this stuff, but it's your feelings. It's not.
Yes.
You don't have. It's
Absolutely.
A belief model.
Yeah.
We can't do a belief model. We don't want to lose our.
Yes.
But anyway,
But my two heroes in the dental industry are Stan Bergman and Gordon Christensen. They also, with Dr. Christensen, he has these podcasts and training seminars, and he also reaches out to the poor people in Asia. I'm allowed to try and get people connected to CRA at a much lower price, for example, than they would have to do it here. So that's very important.
Yeah, he's my dental dad.
Yeah,
when I came out of school, one of the first things I signed up for was going up to Provo once a month for a year for his 12 PCC courses.
Amazing.
And he was the first role model that when you come out of school, dentistry, you got it, I got it. I remember telling a guy when I was out of school, we were talking about crown bridges, I said, look, if you can't prep a crown, if you can't prep a tooth for a monkey could do it. And Gordon was the first one that made me understand, Howard, you will never, ever, ever understand dentistry. You'd have to live 1,000 years. And you know what you know, you don't know what you know. And he was the first guy that took me from dentistry was a craft.
Right.
To dentistry is a science that you and him and me will never. I mean, last time I saw Norella, she was telling me, you hear all these one-liners like, well, cavities are caused by Streptococcus mutans. Norella's like, by the time you're 4 millimeters deep into a cavity, there's not only is there no Streptococcus mutans, we're discovering a new species of bacteria every 3 months.
Yeah.
For a year.
Yeah.
So these little simple one-liners like, cavities are caused by Streptococcus mutans. Well, they're not.
Yeah. But also comparing dental products for dentists. I think what CRA does is comparing the dental products. Because everybody who makes a product comes and says ours is the best product and everything else, and he will tell you it's too expensive, it's no good, they need more studies on it. I mean, that's a wonderful thing that he started, Dr. Christensen. Amazing.
So let's go to more controversial stuff. Amalgam. One of the problems I've seen is that one of the things I don't like people, they don't realize when they're saying stuff on Dental Town and Facebook that there's 2 million dentists around the world reading this. And I remember going to a dental office and I was either Tanzania or Ethiopia or Somalia. It was one of those villages. And the dentist, great guy, had his chair. But anyway, so he puts on the acid etch and then he rinses. But he doesn't have an assistant with a high-speed section. And then the lady puts her hand out and she takes a Dixie cup, rinses, spits in the water. Then he puts the bonding agent on and cures. And then the lady puts her, she's a Muslim girl and it was very difficult. And she swishes again. Then he puts on the composite and he cures it. And he's doing all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, this was just... So in order to have an adhesive dentistry practice, you need high-speed suction, you need four-handed dentistry, you need all this stuff. But when you go around the world, it seems to me, gross numbers, 500,000 dentists practice like they do in Germany and Japan.
Right.
And 1.5 million don't have that facility. Yeah. So how does composite work? So tell me, do you see amalgam in Southeast Asia?
But Asia is reasonably sophisticated, so they highly trained, and they have they have access to all the equipment, and so usually they have all that. They can do adhesive dentistry. But amalgam is, of course, I mean, there was a very famous dentist called Dr. Graham Mount, who was very big in Australia in the development of glass ionomers. And
Dr. Graham?
Graham Mount, yeah, he was very famous.
Graham Mount.
M-O-U-N-T.
Can you find him?
He's like the main clinician involved in the studies of glass ionomer when it first came out.
Yeah, with Wilson and who else? The other people? McLean in England. But
is he still practice?
No, he passed away 2 years ago.
It is so hard to podcast him once they passed away.
It's true. But he did amalgams. I just brought him because he had amalgams in patients that were 30 years old. They were done very well. perfect, no secondary caries.
Well, that's what I find interesting about him. He was a master of gold.
Yes.
And he was like the Tucker Study Club guys.
Yeah.
His quality of gold stuff. He was a master of amalgam, the most beautiful amalgams you ever saw.
Really?
And then with glass ionomers, he did them beautifully too.
Yeah.
But people, as you just said, Howard, they bastardized the technique. And they started seeing it as sort of sloppy stuff. Instead, if you do it the right way, you can have really high quality dentistry.
Well, that's a great geographical question. Why do you see glass ionomer used more in Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia than the United States?
Actually, because of Graham Mount. People like Graham Mount.
Yeah.
You know, Graham Mount also was in Vietnam a lot because he had one of his disciples, Professor Hien No, who went on to do a lot more with...
Who's now the Dean of the Dental School in Kuwait.
Right. In
Sharjah.
In Sharjah.
That's Emirates.
It's next to Dubai, yeah. So because of him and because of Professor Hien No, Vietnam has a large, high usage of glass ionomer because it releases fluoride. If you seal it well, it's easy to use.
I brought Hien No, flew him all the way back when he was in Adelaide.
Oh yeah.
Flew him all the way to Awatuki when I was in charge of the Awatuki Study Club, thinking, man, are you in for a treat? And like 40 people showed up. And it was like,
oh no.
I'm like, man, this guy, just an amazing.
He's a great speaker. I love listening to him.
He's a close friend of ours.
Yeah,
I know him very well. He also has a small farm he's been to my organic farm.
Well, I know you guys got to run. You got to catch a plane. Talk about your organic farm.
Well, you know, in America they say you can take the boy out of the country. You can't take the country out of the boy. And so I was brought up in the countryside in England, in Hereford. In the Hereford area, which is a beautiful area right in between England and Wales. Beautiful rivers, mountains, wild ponies in them. And I was brought up with horses and animals and lots of dogs and hunting and things like that. So I always wanted to have a farm. And in America, I have my place in Pennsylvania, 5 acres in the countryside, but I couldn't afford to employ anybody and I was too busy to do it myself. So when I got to Thailand, it was affordable in comparison with other countries, so I started the farm, and it turned out to be an organic farm. And I have a Thai partner who runs most of the farm because I'm away most of the time. But I love it. I love the animal part of it. We don't kill any animals. We use the animals for their poo for fertilizer only. We have cows and we have pigs.
A vegetarian, vegan?
No, I'm not, but I'm a flexitarian. I would like to be a vegetarian, but it's complicated and sometimes impolite when I go to dinners and invited to things. So when I'm in Thailand, for example, I hardly eat any meat at all. Here with Joel, I have to eat meat every day because that's all he gives me. And but
I'm an ovo, lacto, bovo, porso, avio vegetarian.
I am a vegetarian. I'm 100%
Wow, that's
vegetarian.
right.
I only eat animals that only eat grass.
I have a friend in New Zealand, and he says, I eat everything that moves.
Well, I call it the scream factor of the vegetarian because if you kill an animal and it cries like a human, like a dog, it's illegal. But when you cut a fish head off, it doesn't make a sound. So many people who save the cows, chicken, and pigs, they don't care about fish. And you cut a tomato, you're killing a tomato.
Right.
It doesn't scream.
Yeah.
So I just line up in the scream factor. If it has a face that makes you say, ooh, and it cries when you
anyway,
kill it.
on our farm we kill no animals. Even the chickens, when they stop laying, they go into retirement and they just cost us money because we feed them. But we use all their fertilizer. It's very strict, believe it or not, even though it's in Thailand and in Asia, they're very strict on using any pesticides or insecticides or artificial fertilizer. And so
what about like things like the guinea fowl you have that eat the ticks? You choose animals. We have animals.
You know, it's you also grow plants that help other plants. You know, marigolds, for example, support tomatoes, and guinea fowl, they eat the
So
ticks.
are you going to tie this into dentistry somehow? Are you going to use it for a source of continuing education?
Yes, well, we have already, we're just about to open what do they call
Bed and
it?
breakfast kind of.
No, the office, what do they call it? Distant, remote office for people who want to come. So we're just preparing a room in the countryside at our farm where we have Wi-Fi and printers and everything else, and people can come and work there, eat organic if they want to. If they don't want to, they can eat.
Ryan, you want to go visit? You want to go podcast him and get on his farm?
It's beautiful.
I would love that. That'd be awesome.
I'll go with you. It's beautiful there. Beautiful.
All right, Joel and I will continue this conversation from Thailand.
Do the Singapore one. We'll do Thailand. I'll take you to the universities and introduce you to the deans of the universities there. There you can also hear from them how involved they are with the West and how it's working there. And then we can have a podcast from the farm, and any way you want that, we can do.
You know, I am so bullish on humanity because, you know, like a lot of people, they lose their sense of, they think like today's very bad times politics in the United States.
Right.
Well, did they forget the Civil War when 1 in every 30 Americans were killed?
Right.
They're all upset about all these things, but did they forget the last century we had World War I and World War II? When they're complaining about the deficit, did they forget about the Great Depression from 32 to 36, where we lost a third of the banks and had 25% unemployment for years?
Yeah.
But I think this smartphone that's came out in 2007, I think that's going to be the world's finest century. Because after everybody had a smartphone, and you have all the it killed nationalism,
right?
Because there's people in Thailand talking to Americans, Canadians, and Germans, and it's just this whole. I mean, I am so optimistic on it.
That's true, but that's why I like to bring dental students together or take them to some another country so they can see and meet. Because you have Americans or English people, they have a certain mindset about what people are like in Saudi Arabia or what they're like in Asia, and then you go and see them and think, my gosh, they're normal, nice people, you know.
I know.
And what one of the plans is, we don't make any money, unfortunately, yet with the organic farm. Had it for about 5 years, but it takes a while until you can make money out of it. But what my plan is, first of all, to have people that we treat the people well that work with us. We have a lot of Burmese people working on the farm and some Thai people. But our plan is, when I start making money, is to get orphans, some orphans and train them, send them to agricultural school, train them in organic farming so they can also get involved, you know, an opportunity that they would never have normally. So that's the sort of thing, that's the aim.
And that's kind of like the PPO versus the fee for service. I mean, the stock agriculture, people are willing to pay a lot more. Like when we were little, all coffee was free at every gas station in America. They had a pot, a little styrofoam cup, and now people say, okay, I don't want free. I want to pay $5 a cup. If you would asked me when I was 10, you think someday you could sell coffee for $5?
That's absolutely right.
I would have laughed.
Have you seen the Jackie Mason skit about Starbucks?
No.
I'll send it to you. It's the funniest thing ever.
But I mean, I know that when, you know, I buy cage-free chicken eggs, like
right.
I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, you people are just paying more to say. It's one thing to steal their eggs, but I mean, you shouldn't have to live in
it's actually
horrible conditions and then steal their eggs. You know?
In Asia, it's not as widespread yet, but
what's not?
You know, organic farming or treating animals better and things like that. But it's growing. The middle classes. That's why dentistry is growing, because the middle classes are growing, and the awareness of oral hygiene and things like that are growing tremendously. So it's a big growth area. Also.
And then I just want to say one thing on the international travel. When I hear Americans say that America is the greatest country I ever lived, okay, I already know they've never left the country. When people talk about other religious radicals around the world, their own, I mean, how many religious radicals can you name? I mean, you go to any family, you go to half these churches, there's crazy old men saying crazy stuff in every religion. But the one thing my intellectual journey that made me the smartest was not 9 years of college. I was visiting 50 countries.
That's true.
Right.
And that's why I always could try to convince my boys. I always took at least 2, 3, sometimes 4 to all these countries. And I think my boys are wiser from seeing
same for me.
From all these countries. So let's do this. You plan any trip. And like I say, I do. When you fly that far, you want to stay at least 10 days.
Right.
And then go around.
We actually are planning a trip already.
I'll tell you
October.
That's a different one for pediatric.
Yeah, I know.
We'll do a different one with Howard.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you my last story. One day I got off work 5, went to Phoenix, Sky Harbor, flew to LA, had a layover, flew 16 and a half hours to Sydney, landed at 6 in the morning, got to the convention, lectured for the Australian Dental Association from 8 to 5, and then they took me back to the airport, and then like 9 that night, caught a 16-and-a-half-hour flight back to LA, then had a layover, then back to Phoenix, got home just in time to change into my uniform and see my first patient Monday morning at 7 a.m.
Wow.
That's something you can do when you're in your 20s.
Right.
But at 55,
You don't want to do it.
oh my gosh.
But,
I mean,
but you
it's just-
can relax at the farm.
Absolutely.
We'll go to Singapore, we'll go to Hong Kong.
Best food you've ever had.
I'll introduce you to
So of all
Schein
the
in
countries
Hong
you
Kong
lived in,
and-
where if you had to stay in one place and never leave again, where would you stay?
Well, I think America is amazing. I lived in America for 16 years. I mean, there are all sorts of things in America, but it's a beautiful, wonderful country. There are lots of very nice people here. Australia is probably the choice I would make because it's a little bit more English and there are fewer people and they have everything. They have snow, they have sun, they have desert, they have rivers and lakes.
That's where my brother moved to permanently.
Yeah. But I mean, Asia's nice too. I mean, it's difficult because if you, like yourself, if you travel a lot, there are nice things in various places, you know.
That's why I'll never buy a condo. People are saying, why don't you buy a condo? Dude, I don't want to go to a condo every week. I'd rather go to Thailand.
Right.
And the next time go to Vietnam.
Yeah,
the next time go
right.
to, I mean,
What you said about Americans and not being cosmopolitan, I think I heard a statistic, and I think it's still accurate, that 70% of Americans don't have a passport.
Yeah.
Which is the highest number of even developing countries. Most of them have passports.
And the funniest thing is when they say things like, well, that's socialized medicine. I say, well, what does that mean, socialized medicine? You know, like in them socialist countries. I'll say, like, what? I'll say, like, Scandinavia. Well, dude, have you been to Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Norway? Pretty sure those are the 4 nicest countries on earth.
Right.
And you're using that as a swear word.
I think Sweden is one of the highest rated for people who are happy.
Satisfaction.
Satisfaction.
Denmark's
yeah.
number
Oh
one.
my God. I remember one time I was in Sydney, Australia, and on the front page of the Sydney newspaper, they were talking about some lady's trunk got broken into. I'm like, in Phoenix, they can find a dead person in an alley and it would make the newspaper.
That says a lot.
Hey, you should get on Dental Town, talk about what you're doing in that organic stuff, and you plan a trip.
I'll plan a trip. I promise I'll plan a trip for you.
It's my number one hobby is always talking to dentists.
I'm happy to do that
It's
for
so
you.
funny because, some people go to these deals and they want to check out all these restaurants and all that. My genuinely coolest, funnest deal is to go to those countries and I just walk into dental offices.
Yeah.
I just hang out in dental offices and check it out. It is so interesting.
I can take you to many dental offices. I can take you to the universities. I'll take you to Henry Schein, which is a big corporation in
Should we get Stan to go with us?
I'm not sure. He's a busy man, so we'll see.
Maybe you could coincide it.
Yeah. But it'll be very interesting. It'll be very interesting for you, I'm sure, because I can give you a good inside view of what dentistry is, what's happening.
Well, this show will be continued. Part 2 will be filmed from Bangkok, Thailand.
Well, that's it.
Thanks so much for coming by the house today.
Lovely. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you so much.
Yeah.